Good afternoon. Today I'm going to show you guys an interview that I had with my friend Cassie, answering a lot of questions that I get from you guys about moving to Mexico with your family, moving to Mexico with young children, children of school age in general, her experiences about how they chose Merida over other parts of Mexico, why they moved in the first place. She recently published a book all about moving to Mexico, which I will link below. It's on Amazon. You can get it as a Kindle or as a hard copy, I believe. And without further ado, let's get into the interview and talk about moving to Mexico with your family. But you guys came to Merida for your honeymoon, and that was the first time you've been to Mexico, right?
Actually, we didn't come to Merida on our honeymoon at all.
Sorry, not Merida, Mexico.
Yeah,
Mexico.
Okay. But no, my first time in Mexico was when I was 14 and I spent a day in Tijuana with my parents. And then when our honeymoon wound up by being in Mexico by mistake, my first response was, I've been to Mexico. I don't know if I need to go again, which of course was ridiculous. But I had no idea about the size and complexity of the country at that point. I thought, I've spent a day popping over the border from the US. I'll be fine, thanks very much. But for a number of reasons, we wound up having our honeymoon in Mexico, and it changed my life, literally. Clearly, I'm sitting here now. But no, we were in Mexico City and Oaxaca, and then we drove down to Palenque and to the border with Guatemala. So no, we didn't head to Yucatan until 2016 when we came back for 6 months just to see if we would like living in Mexico or how we felt about being in Mexico with our small kids.
Yeah. And when you spent your honeymoon sort of traveling around the country, did you ever even talk about it between the two of you? Like, this could be a place.
No, we knew we wanted to come back. We said at the time we would definitely come back to Mexico. We really enjoyed ourselves. We loved the food and the alcohol and our honeymoon. But we love getting to know people and the culture and all the things that you would normally fall in love with when you come on a small trip to Mexico. We also knew that we wanted to go traveling more, and we knew that if we ever had kids, we would not necessarily want to live with them in the UK. So I think everything was probably leading towards a Mexico return, but no, I don't think we'd actually vocalized it while we were on that trip.
Cool. But you're a little bit of like a serial expat, an eternal expat, if you will. Where have you lived before you moved to Mexico?
My husband and I met in Rwanda when I was working with street children there. Then we moved together to Ethiopia. He'd also lived around Europe on his own. Obviously, we're both from the UK. I actually haven't lived anywhere else. I've worked for extensive periods across the African continent and in the former Soviet Union. And we've both traveled all over the world together and separately. But this has been nearly 4 years now in Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. So after calling it quits on life in London, you came to Mexico just for 6 months, but you knew that this was like the plan was sort of to try and find a place to live, or was it really just, we need a break, like we're burnt out and let's go?
We were definitely burned out. We didn't know. I think we had this romantic idea that maybe we'd come to Mexico for 6 months and we'd just never leave. Of course, we can't do that because you get a 6-month visa. So that was a no-go. And once we got here, we realized that. And we realized that if we wanted to do things legally, which we really did, we had to go home. So in that 6-month period, we completely fell in love with Mexico and knew we did not want to leave. But we were also adamant that it was really important for us to do things completely by the book. We didn't want to be overstaying our welcome. We didn't want to be here illegally. It didn't feel right given the way our country treats immigrants. It would have felt incredibly arrogant of us to say, well, we can do what we like, even if we come from a country that doesn't treat people well doing that in our home. So we went home and we got visas. So, we got temporary residency so we could come back here and live as we wanted to live.
Cool. And that's a whole nother video and book, I'm sure. But people can read about that more in your book, I'm sure. You chose Merida because you feel like a little bit it chose you when you were visiting on your 6-month trip. But did you consider other places, or was it always going to be Merida?
No, it wasn't always going to be Merida at all. We started in Oaxaca, and I kind of wanted to stay there, but my husband was not keen. He loves the city, but he just didn't feel it was the right place for us. And he persuaded me that we should leave. I had all these romantic notions of going and living in a pueblo and, just like not even necessarily speaking Spanish, but speaking Mayan or child or something. He was just like, yeah, no, that's not happening. We're going to a city. So he's always more sensible than I am. So he basically read through the guidebook and he fell in love with the idea of Merida, and then so persuaded me. And then we came, and within a couple of weeks, I think we've both really fallen in love with the city. It's a really beautiful place. You've been, there's so much to do. Although it's boiling hot, there are so many things you can do, and you can have so many adventures. And we've been here, on and off for years now, and we're still finding new things to do, new cenotes to swim in, or ruins that we haven't been to yet, or different ways to enjoy the beach. So yeah, it was a really good choice, I think.
So when you left after the 6-month trip, you were like, Merida, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
And you didn't, okay, so now that you've lived in Mexico for almost 4 years, would you pick Merida again? Are there other cities that you've visited and you thought like, this could be home?
That's a really good question. There are lots of cities I could live in for sure. I'm not sorry we picked Merida. We will be here for a while, for the future, for sure. We want our kids to be continuing educated here. We've got great friends. Our kids are in great schools. Life is it's very comfortable in Merida. It's a really easy place to live. So no, we wouldn't leave at the moment. That's a really tricky question. To be honest, every time I go somewhere, I'm like, I found a new favorite place. I love this city.
Me too.
Yeah, it's a really tricky question.
So one of the biggest things that I hear from people who are asking about moving to Mexico with kids, especially, with the whole family in general, is that like they can't seem to convince their spouse, or they're not on the same page at the same time. And you had a little bit of experience with this, I read in your book, but like, was there ever a time that you or your husband had to like convince the other person that like now is the time, or, let's go, let's do this move, let's take our kids and start again?
No, I don't think so. I think because we're both very much on the same page when it comes to adventure and holidays and exploring and everything. I think we both knew it wasn't like we were feeling like, oh, maybe the other one doesn't really want to do this and they're just leading us on, or it's all talk. We both knew that we're both really into the idea and it had to be right for both of us. And we were both working, we were both fairly happy with our day-to-day existence, even if it was incredibly stressful. Like we had interesting jobs. So it wasn't too much of a problem to stay at home, although every time somebody was unhappy, then we'd talk about it. And then finally it all came together and it was the right time to go.
Awesome. That's, I think, lucky. I
Yes.
hope for a lot of people probably, but how old were your kids when you moved to Mexico?
When we came for 6 months, they were 2 and 4. So pretty small.
Yeah. And what was it like for them? We talked about this previously, that a lot of people think that moving kids are adaptable. They'll figure it out. They have no problem. But like you've had some different experiences with what it was like for your kids.
So our 2-year-old, it didn't really matter where she was. She was 2. She just needed to be with her parents. Nothing really was going on for her that was except us. The only thing with her was really interesting was she was a very early speaker. So she was speaking completely fluently in English at that point. But she was too young to understand why people couldn't understand her. She didn't really understand about the whole different language thing. So she was just speaking completely fluently in English and then getting very upset that people weren't able to cope with that. And even people who spoke English, because obviously 2-year-olds are hard to understand unless they're your own child often. So that was really hard for her to get her head around, and that took a while. And our 4-year-old, he was pretty annoyed with leaving home. In the UK, we start school at 4. So instead of going to primary school with all his friends, he was being whisked off to another country, which he didn't really appreciate, to be honest. But by the time we left to go back to sort out our residency here, he didn't want to leave. And now he didn't want to learn Spanish to begin with, but now he's proudly bilingual. They both call themselves Spanish speaking, English, Mexican, Yucatecan. They don't really know what they are anymore, but they're a really happy mix of everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was it like to choose schools? Was it easy enough to find information about the different schools in Merida that are available to immigrants moving to the city, or?
Yes, everything is on Facebook, so you can do searches use a Google map to start with to search for schools in the area, or ask questions in Facebook to find out where most people are sending their kids. And then there's a lot of things to think about. Do you want your kids in an English speaking school if you're an English speaker? Do you want them in a bilingual school or a fully Mexicanized school? Are you a permanent resident or a citizen returning? Because then you can use the public system. The rest of us have to be in the private system. Do you want an incredibly strict traditional school? Do you want something a little bit more liberal and forward-thinking? There are all sorts of there are so many schools in this city, particularly, and I'm sure in all Mexican cities, that you can really think about what you want for your kids, and probably you'll find that school.
That's great. So you feel like there was a little bit of, like, every school is a little bit different, offering something.
Very much so.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing that's particularly interesting with Merida at the moment is because it's so popular. 3 or 4 years ago, you could just show up in the middle of the school year and assume you'd get a place in one of these really good private schools because they just weren't oversubscribed. But actually now, because so many Mexicans are moving to the city as well as foreigners, there are often waiting lists, and you really need to be applying at the right time, which is usually in January or so, or going for the interviews in January or so to get your place for the following school year.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Any final tips or advice for people who are thinking about moving with their families, with their kids, on their own?
Well, apart from
moving to Mexico. Of course, number one tip.
I mean, obviously, I think do it. I think come to Mexico first. Don't move here blindly. It isn't for everybody. I do know people who have come and not enjoyed themselves. I think it's worth that experimental, exploratory couple of months. Even if you can only manage a month or so, it's worth doing before actually diving in. But if you know that you love Mexico, go for it. You only live once. And it's a great experience for the kids as well. I mean, bilingual children, what better gift could you give your kids?
Yeah, an amazing gift. Yeah. Rather than struggling through language learning as an adult.
Exactly.
Cool. Thanks for chatting again. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, this interview. I will link below also to all of Cassie's information, her website, how you can contact her through Facebook, and ask more questions if you have them about moving to Mexico with your family, or in particular about moving to Merida with your family. As always, if you have any other questions about moving to Mexico in general, let me know in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It really supports my channel, and I will see you next time. If I can see anything in this bright sun. Bye!